when I interviewed with them, the two interviewers, in the most gentlest way, said, "You're awesome, but we realize your passion and your heart is also in other areas, and you need to pursue that." And it was like one of those moments where, okay, interesting. You're not the best fit, right? It's like, you're not the best fit for this, but it's not to say that you're failing. Because you tell when you're perfectionist and type A. Peace Corps helped me be less type A, because you just have to let go of control in Peace Corps. But that was another conversation with two interviewers who, it was a moment, right? And it was a fleeting moment, but it was okay, I'm not a good fit for this when I thought I was.
It's How She Did It, the show where women of color share their often winding and rarely linear career paths. I'm Yolanda Enoch, and on today's show, I chat with Kat Yalung, whose family immigrated to the U.S. from the Philippines when she was 2. Her lifelong focus on service and social responsibility led her down a career path that includes the Peace Corps in Nicaragua, and to her present job leading a not-for-profit tech incubator here in Los Angeles. For links to the things we chat about, check out the show notes page for this episode at howshedidit.club/14.
My name is Kat Yalung. I am the director of our startup launch program here at Bixel Exchange. We're the Center of Innovation and Tech at the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. And everything we do is in support of growing the greater Los Angeles tech ecosystem. So we're a big believer in how do we make sure diversity in the diverse face of Los Angeles is also represented in technology. So we have a couple main programs that we do it with. We connect with our Tech Talent Pipeline program. We connect underserved high school and community college students to jobs and career pathways in tech. And then I specifically run, it's our not-for-profit tech incubator, no cost and non-equity one-on-one mentorship for early stage entrepreneurs in tech. The reason why I love this current job at Bixel Exchange is because we live in 3 different worlds. We live in the public sector, funded through the Small Business Administration and the state of California, and then also in the private sector with the chamber members, so the AT&Ts of the world, the UPS, and then also just interacting with the tech sector.
For those who have listened to previous episodes, like my very first podcast was with Miki Reynolds, and and this is one of the questions that I ask all of my guests at the end, like, who are your possibility models? Who are people that you're inspired by or who show you that it's possible to live your dreams? And you were Miki's. Wow. And so I heard that and I'm like, I've been hearing your name around. I'm like, who is this cat person? This cat person.
This cat woman. Who is this cat woman?
Who is this cat woman? Okay, so we're going to go back a little bit. So tell me about your life before you started high school.
I'm an immigrant. My parents brought me to the United States when I was 2 years old. I was born in the Philippines.
Ah, so you were, I thought you were leading that you were like first generation in the U.S. Oh, I had no idea.
I was an alien until the 4th grade. Naturalized citizen. My dad was the last generation of Filipinos to be recruited by the United States Navy during that time. And we immigrated into California. Okay. Spent maybe less than a year in California, and my parents are both engineers, and they had a friend in the Philippines who said, come up to Spokane, Washington. It's a great place to raise children, and houses are really affordable. So my parents made the decision and raised my sister and I, so it's the 2 of us, in Spokane, Washington, which is right next to Idaho. Not much diversity there at all.
Do you remember anything about your time? I know you were 2, but do you have any memories of that time?
Before my immigrating here? No. I mean, I have a lot of memories of elementary school and growing up in the woods and nature and loving that and block parties. Both my parents being engineers, I have a lot of memories of that. My mom's an electrical engineer. My dad was mechanical. I think having my mom as an amazing female figure in that space. She was actually the first woman engineer in Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines.
How was Spokane?
It was actually really challenging in that I first moved to a Air Force base, which there's a lot of new people, a lot of new students, really diverse from all around the world because military is just moving. And then my parents decided to move us. I remember being there for a couple of years and I loved it. Everyone was really welcoming.
Were you on the base?
On the base. On the base with military housing and meeting a lot of new people from different parts of the world. And I just remember how diverse it was and enjoying that diversity and how everyone was just really friendly. And then my parents decided to buy a home in the suburban parts of Spokane, Washington. And Spokane is not diverse. Yeah. So I remember in third grade.
Most places aren't.
Yeah. And third grade, they bought a house, moved there. And I remember being, I think, one of the only girls in all of elementary school who had black hair and darker skin. And that was a challenge.
A challenge for how people received you or how you felt that you fit?
Fitting in, and then also people didn't know. I don't think it was blatant racism, but the subtle racism part came across for sure. People just didn't know. They're like, "What are you? Where are you from? Why don't you have blonde eyes and blue hair?" I mean, those questions would come up, and just the standard of what was beautiful was very obvious that it was blonde eyes and light skinned.
Yeah. Are you fluent in
the language? So my parents speak Tagalog and their dialect. They mainly speak their dialect, which is called Kapampangan. I do not. I can understand a lot. So my replacement for that is speaking Spanish fluently. And my grandma spoke Spanish. Filipinos, for those of you who aren't too familiar with the Filipino, it's colonized by the Spaniards for 500 plus years. And then the Americans came in, Spanish-American War, and was trying to get the Philippines as a U.S. territory for a long time. So all of our education in the Philippines is in English. So that's why a lot of Filipinos speak English. And then Filipinos are really big on assimilation and really want, especially my generation of parents, really want your children to not have an accent, to not act any different than others. And they decided to raise my sister and I in a very non-diverse town. My high school, we're jumping ahead. My high school was 200, class of 200. I was the only full Asian, 2 Black students, maybe another half Asian of 200 people.
Why do you think there's a desire for parents to have their kids assimilate versus?
I think parents automatically defer to protecting, and anytime you're in protector mode, you don't ever want your kids to be ostracized, bullied, and the best way you can protect them to that is to fit in. And so encouraging that. And then also I think from a Filipino cultural perspective, my dad was Navy, and that was his ticket of bringing his family in and getting them citizenship. And so being really respectful of what the opportunities he brought and what they did as immigrants and how impressive it was to buy a house when I was in third grade and he came here with no credit history and things like that.
Did they, when your parents got married, did you know if they always had the desire to move to the United States, or was it they learned about this opportunity because they were recruiting?
I'm not actually sure. That's a good question. Because the Americans were in the Philippines for a short time, that the Americans were recruiting them very heavily, but I'm not sure if, I know America is always a land of opportunity for many, so going there, quote unquote, going there is a, a huge accomplishment in life, and bringing your family and getting citizenship and safety just generally is a big part of it out of developing countries.
Your sister is older?
Younger,
okay. So was she born in here?
Like I'm the youngest. She was actually born in San Diego, yes. San Diego, California.
Okay.
She inspires me all the time as well.
Why does she inspire you?
Because she pursues her passion and she loves working out and loves health, and she manages 2 studios at home that are yoga, TRX, and spin studios at home. Yeah. And Spokane, Washington doesn't have a lot of workout. It's something I think more of a trend. And so she's, the owner's right hand in managing a team of, 40 instructors and 2 studios. And she got certified. She's one of the few in Spokane that are certified in TRX. And TRX is a cool, suspension training that was also military born. So, and she loves it and she's awesome at it.
So what were some of your interests and things you liked to do when you were younger?
I was a tomboy. That was another thing that I didn't mention. From 5th grade to about ninth, 10th grade, all of the clothes that I wore in that year, I could still wear today.
Oh, well, that is very nice. Because you wore like super baggy.
Super baggy.
I was like, it's not like I haven't gained a pound since.
No.
It was like, no, I wore things that were way
Super
too
baggy.
big for me.
I was a tomboy, so I loved basketball, and I loved Kobe Bryant, and I loved the Chicago Bulls era, Pippen, Rodman, and Jordan. I loved TLC, Master P, No Limit Records,
Oh my gosh.
Puff and Mace. That was all 5th grade to 9th grade.
Okay, so 200 people. Was this a special school? Like, was it private or was it just your public school?
My parents could not afford private, so public school, but an incredible public school. I realize now how incredible.
Did your
it was.
parents pick the neighborhood because of the schools?
I'm pretty sure they did. I took AP classes in high school and had some very incredible teachers. And those AP classes are still harder than some of my college classes.
Did you play sports? Or
I played basketball since
Okay.
the 5th grade. And I was typically the only girl and one other best friend who was, I was the odd Asian one and she was the tall white girl. And she was Rodman and I was Pippen. And yeah, that was us in elementary school. But high school, I also played sports. I played volleyball and basketball.
I tried to play volleyball and I always jammed my fingers. I was like, I'm done with this. Like, how do
That's
people
tough.
set without jamming their fingers? I'm done with this.
I used the elbows to protect me, but
It's not illegal. Volleyball is one of my favorite sports to watch during the Olympics because those women are
they're beasts.
beasts.
They're beasts. I also did martial arts in high school.
Okay, so you've been doing martial arts for...
Well, I did Kempo karate. My dad was very big into martial arts. He actually had swords in the house and would practice. I remember growing up and watching him practice with nunchucks and swords. And then my sister and I they enrolled us in Kempo karate and we did it for a couple of years. And then I had to quit because I was doing basketball and volleyball and school and working. I actually started working my first W-2 job in high school, my junior year. And then I babysat on the side and dog sat on the side too.
Oh, you're busy.
Active. I was a very active high school. I volunteered actually a lot in high school as well.
What types of volunteer work did you do?
Yeah, I remember the food bank. And then also, I don't know if it was a chamber, but it was something government related where like getting a youth council and organizing around citywide events.
So what got you interested in volunteering?
Both of my parents in the Philippines, my dad grew up very poor. And so he likes to tell us stories all the time about, living 9 people in a room this big and having one bathroom for 200 people in a building. And so when we moved to the United States, just being really mindful of how fortunate we were to have roof, shelter, food, safety. And so for the holidays, we actually volunteered a lot as a family. Growing up, I remember this very distinctly. For the holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving, always going to homeless shelters and feeding them, or just volunteering our time at a Goodwill. So we did that together as a family. And I don't know, those were values that were still instilled on serving others and that are less fortunate than you. And so I feel very grateful that my parents introduced that into my life because it's been something that's carried me and been a huge part of who I am.
When you graduated high school, what did you want to be when you grow up and why?
Yeah, I went through this phase of, I want to be an elementary school teacher. So I was a big sister for 4 years. And then I decided, nope, I think that'd be too boring. I want to do engineering. Like my parents are both engineers. And specifically, I want to do biomedical engineering. So I was fortunate in high school to have amazing programs in MESA, Mathematics, Engineering, and Science Achievement. And also like a career center type person who was amazing and helped us pull together a portfolio and experience and encourage us to do more volunteer work. But I was set on, after high school, I wrote a lot of scholarship essays about being a biomedical engineer because I was obsessed with the idea of building body parts for whatever reason. And that was my pursuit at the time.
You graduated high school and you went directly to college?
Yes, education, especially for Filipinos. My parents I remember from elementary school, them always saying, the one thing that people can't take away from you is your education. So you prioritize that first. I applied for a lot of different places and ultimately went to the school, Gonzaga University, which is private and very expensive, but amazing Jesuit school. And I applied for a lot of these small scholarships that actually paid for my first couple of years. in college, and is the only reason why I left Gonzaga without, more than 40K in debt.
So why did you choose Gonzaga?
They were really focused on servant leadership and service and the Jesuit philosophy of social responsibility. And that was obviously a huge part of who I was in high school and still, and they also offered me scholarships. Yeah. Private universities have that ability, especially based on, lower income and things.
How far was Gonzaga from home?
Not far. Spokane, Washington.
I was in Spokane too.
So I was one of the few Gonzaga students who didn't stay on campus, and I lived at home. That's how I was able to save a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked 2 jobs during college, but I worked in the continuing education nonprofit part of Gonzaga University, and then I also worked at a hotel in hospitality. So
you're at Gonzaga. You got a bachelor's in business administration and then international business and human resources management.
Yes. So that journey, college is I don't think we should be forced to pick one major in college.
And
we're
you
18
did not.
years old. No, I did not. I actually studied mechanical engineering for 2 years.
Okay.
So I studied mechanical engineering for 2 years, and I loved it.
Did they not have a biomedical engineering?
They did not. They did not. The other option was University of Washington, and they had an incredible engineering program there. I could have done biomedical engineering there, but mechanical was en route to biomedical. Okay. So I studied mechanical engineering for 2 years. The decision to leave mechanical engineering was really, really, really pivotal point in my life, where I remember having this debate with my calc teacher, who I'm so thankful for, in just helping me realize I had other passions in life. And the time I was working 2 jobs, I was volunteering, and I was studying mechanical engineering. And there was no way, if I was going to pursue mechanical engineering, could I have kept doing all of the other things. And so it was a decision to say, okay, if I switch majors, then what do I want to do? So I was pursued and checked out marketing. And then I thought to myself, I don't want to convince people to buy things that they don't need. So I switched and was very fascinated by different cultures and doing business in other cultures. So I switched to international business. And then on the human resource management side, I think it was mainly kind of the training piece of it that was fascinating to me, because I had worked in the continuing education department, and my boss there, she's single mom, inspirational, still a mentor for me today. So
was there something that you remember that finally, were you toying with the idea of do I want to do my biomedical engineering? Do I want to do mechanical engineering, continue that? Walk me through how how did that come about? Was it one particular thing, or was it just this tsunami of different things that really forced you to figure out if this is what you want to do and wanted to do something else?
When I was in college, you're young and you're easily influenced by your parents, and oftentimes you're still influenced today at our age, still influenced by parents, but both of them are engineers. I remember speaking literally, I told you my calc teacher mentioned him briefly, and I loved calc, but I hated physics, and the thought of having to take 2 more years of physics was propelling enough to say, do I want to continue mechanical engineering for 2 more years? I chose also Gonzaga because it was small classes. There was 30 students. You really got to know the teachers. They really cared about you. It was obvious. Having, I think, numerous teachers and a counselor who really helped me explore what my other passions were and paying attention to that.
Did you initiate those conversations, or were they kind of checking in?
I think it's a little bit of both. Okay. I think it was a both conversation of, I clearly loved working in hospitality, and I also loved working in the continuing education department. And I also volunteered at the Career Center. That was an interesting passion in college at Gonzaga, where I was helping resume reviews, and there was etiquette training. And I don't even know how I got into that. That was something I pursued. And I would literally go on volunteer boards and look at different things that I want to do. But I think it was a little bit of both sides, and them questioning, you're doing all these activities. Is mechanical engineering a part of that path? And so I think having kind of those adult mentors to ask those questions is really important when you're younger and still figuring it out. We're all still figuring it out. But.
Yeah, but then them putting it in a way where it's almost gentle, where it's not I'm telling you that maybe you're not in the right place, but you seem to be showing a lot of interest here. Maybe you should look more into that versus, sometimes you feel kind of defensive, like, are they seeing something in me that is saying that I shouldn't be doing
I can't
this?
do mechanical engineering? Or that moment happened a lot, where I thought I was failing myself, and I was a very high performer in school and studied a lot. There was a lot of other engineering major friends who I'm like, you're not studying at all and you're acing everything. Yeah. That wasn't me. I was studying a lot and I was spending a lot of time in the library. I was very committed to school and working 2 jobs, so I couldn't do anything else. The other pivotal moment in college was, I remember interviewing actually towards the end for a Coca-Cola internship, where you would easily kind of move up the rankings through kind of a program of like being, I don't know, just learning different sides of the Coca-Cola. And I found it super fascinating. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. When I interviewed with them, the 2 interviewers, in the most gentlest way, said, you're awesome, but we realize your passion and your heart is also in other areas, and you need to pursue that. And it was like one of those moments where, okay, interesting. You're not the best fit, right? It's like, you're not the best fit for this, but it's not to say that you're failing. Because you tell when you're perfectionist and type A. Peace Corps helped me be less type A, because you just have to let go of control in Peace Corps. But that was another conversation with 2 interviewers who, it was a moment, right? And it was a fleeting moment, but it was okay, I'm not a good fit for this when I thought I was.
How was it when you heard it? Was it hard to hear it? Yeah. Did you not believe them?
It's hard to hear. Of course it's hard to hear. You're a 20-year-old owning the world. Yeah. I got this. I can do whatever I want. I just graduated from college. And you always realize in college we have no perspective. We're so young. Yeah. We have perspective, but we're, limited perspective. And so having people older than you doing a lot of interviews, I just remember having to really digest it and take it in and understand why. In my mind, I had failed. But then I realized, obviously, later that it was not. It was one of the best conversations that could have ever happened. Yeah.
Obviously, your career thoughts and what you want to do with your life have changed when you graduated.
Yeah.
Or what did you think that you wanted to pursue?
So I had a job, all through college. I was working in hospitality. I was working at this beautiful boutique hotel called the Davenport Hotel in Spokane, still one of the most beautiful hotels. And so I was making money, surviving. And then I said, I probably should get a quote unquote, big girl job after college. So I studied human resource management. So I was looking at human resource roles. Yeah. So I was still, doing the volunteering, but the HR came about. I found a role, HR generalist at a big nonprofit hospital, Holy Family Hospital.
Were you already volunteering with them?
No, I wasn't already volunteering with them. It was just a role. It was a part-time role. I was specifically looking for part-time because I still wanted to continue. I was making good money as a servant in hospitality. You make the minimum and then you make tips, and specifically a part-time job, but gain the experience in an office setting. And I was very hesitant in an office setting, but I was fortunate enough to also. Why are you hesitant? Because I really enjoyed, hospitality was good. It was easy. And you make people happy serving, giving them food and giving them drinks. And I was making good money. So it's comfortable. Life was good. And then I knew I needed, though, to pursue more hard skills. And so doing this HR generalist role, I actually didn't do that for very long. It was less than a year, only because I decided it wasn't, not that it wasn't for me. I enjoyed it. And I had an amazing team of women that were inspiring there too. An HR director who was amazing from Australia. I remember having a moment while I was still working in hospitality where someone just asked me, why are you still in Spokane? And I couldn't answer the question. And so I knew in college, oh my gosh, the most pivotal moment in college, oh my goodness, I skipped the semester. I did an American semester program and I studied international environment development. I wanted to study abroad. Okay. And Gonzaga had a study abroad program to Florence, but I didn't want to do something that everyone else was doing. So I found this at the study abroad office. I found this opportunity to do an internship in DC and then also go to another country. And so I originally was like, this is my opportunity, biomedical. I could go to Brazil and I could also do an internship in DC. So I go, but instead of going to Brazil, it's South Africa. And I study international environment and development. So that semester,
so how did that go from what you thought to someplace else?
Oh my gosh. That semester in American University changed my life and is the reason why I still work with entrepreneurs today. I completely missed that. My home state mom in South Africa was teaching business skills and entrepreneurship. And I remember it was like a wealth creation track. And I remember saying, wow, like that education is powerful because it's helping people survive, but also provide for their families and provide for their community in a way that I'd never seen before. I was able to see my host mom in both. It was the first time in South Africa was in 2006. And that was the first time I took out a loan actually in college to be able to do that program. Yeah, it was life-changing. The whole semester wasn't really a class. It was my instructor at the time, Joe, was a facilitator. He called himself a facilitator and said, I just am going to introduce you to everyone in the international environment development space that does work and share what they do and why they do it and how they do it. And it was macro players and micro players, and it was beyond eye-opening. And then we went to South Africa for a month. Everything we were studying about South Africa and the social, economic, environmental issues, we saw in real life when we were there. You learn about their social issues, their environmental issues, and then you go there and speak to people who used to be a part of the apartheid regime and then have switched is like a whole other powerful thing. Mm-hmm. And then you meet, people who live in, dumpsters who the closest hospital is 7 miles away. It's scarier. They don't have running water. That's a whole nother experience as well, like a poverty at another level. My dad would talk about poverty in the Philippines, but experiencing it and seeing it in another country, another continent. And South Africa is a fascinating history and culturally 11 official languages, and it's beautiful. So I fell in love. Mm-hmm. I fell in love in South Africa, and then told myself, I took a picture of 2010 World Cup coming, and in 4 years, I don't know where I'm going to be, but I want to go back, and I'm coming back, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm coming back.
Did you?
And I did. I made it happen somehow. And it was when I was in Peace Corps. And just being able, the first time I went to South Africa was structured. The second time was all just unplanned and for World Cup, and went for 2 weeks before World Cup and the first week of World Cup. And that's just experiencing a world event like that in a country that had gone through so much political, social, economic strife was phenomenal. Yeah. Seeing Bishop Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, Alicia Keys, Juanes all on the same stage was mind-blowing. Don't know how that happened, but it did.
It's very, very cool. You realized that HR is not for you. How? You went to the Peace Corps.
So, again, a conversation. I feel like your life can change in a second with one conversation or one question. So when someone asked me when I was working in hospitality, why are you still in Spokane? And I couldn't answer it. I said, my passion is, I know I want to volunteer. I know I want to learn another language. And I had a life-changing, transformative experience in South Africa and in DC. And why am I not doing more volunteering? So I remember coming back from DC and researching all these volunteer opportunities, and they cost thousands of dollars. I didn't have thousands of dollars. So I remember Peace Corps coming up and Peace Corps recruiters coming and saying, okay, you can volunteer. But it's
what did they come to? What do you
Gonzaga?
Mean? They came to
yeah, they would recruit.
Okay.
Actually, Gonzaga is one of the highest suppliers of Peace Corps volunteers. Top 5 for a school. And we're so focused on social responsibility. And then I also remember meeting Peace Corps in Washington, D.C. And so I said, well, maybe I should just apply because it doesn't cost money. All the other ones that cost money, I don't know where the money's going. It could be going to overhead. I applied in December while I was still at this HR job.
What was the application process
it's
like?
50-page application online. And then they have to make sure you're medically fit, psychologically fit, dental, all these little checkpoints because the government is paying for you to live in another country for 2 years. And you just request regions of the world. You can request. Peace Corps as an organization really tries to match you with your skill set and experience with the needs of the country.
What regions did you select?
I was keen on, South America. It sounds so romantic and amazing, and I want to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
And, you can just request it, but they could also send you to who knows where. I think Peace Corps today is in over 130 countries still. And each country is run differently based on the program director and country director and based on the needs and developing needs of country.
And so how did you feel when you got Nicaragua?
Oh my gosh. So the application process, people typically have to wait a full year just to go. So people can apply and then leave a year later. I applied in December and left in May.
Whoa.
So that process was, I tell other Peace Corps volunteers that I was in Nicaragua with, and that's insane. Just didn't know how quickly that happened.
So had they communicated that expect for it to take a year for you to get assigned somewhere?
They tell you it could be a long time. And so I wasn't even sure. And you don't even know if you're going to get accepted and if, you're missing signatures on your application because there's all these little things that you have to do and get signed off for. And I remember being in this room, in a little tiny room like this, interviewing secretly at my Holy Family Hospital HR job. And I'm like, hi, I want to do Peace Corps and I want to learn another language and I'm this and that. And she said, okay, thanks for the interview. I think I want to move you in the process. And then it was just kind of a yes, and then a phone call, like, I don't know, a month later and saying, okay, we're going to have you like fill this in, and then getting an invitation and saying, hey, we want to accept you in a Peace Corps, and we would love to invite you to a specific program called the Small Business Development Program in Nicaragua.
Okay.
And you would be leaving in May. So if you choose to accept, you need to let us know by this date. I have that piece of paper and invite.
When did you get notified of it?
April.
Oh, so you had like less than a month or two to
decide.
Make a decision and then pack up your stuff and go.
Yeah, they give you 100 pounds. They say no more than a 100-pound limit to take to another country.
That is not a lot.
No, not at all.
How did your parents feel about you going?
It's a good question. I'm terrified, I'm sure. Terrified. Yeah. I was like the first child they raised in the United States of America. And I remember my mom saying, I'm proud you're pursuing something that you're passionate about and where your heart is. Even though I wasn't going kind of the corporate route or, having a stable salary, because Peace Corps is volunteer. You don't get paid, but they pay for you to live. So
how do you support yourself if you had debt?
I had to pause a lot of subsidized loans. So I paused.
But you would be able to get the granting of that. Okay.
And then thankfully my parents, there was one loan that I still had to continue paying for that wasn't more than a couple, maybe $100 a month that my dad really took on to help. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that. And yeah, so I was able to do that. And Peace Corps is typically a 27-month commitment. So 3 months of pre-service training and then 2 years of service. It's like getting airdropped in a random place and you don't know if anyone's there. But I was fortunate, very, very fortunate to have an incredible program director, Georgia, and an incredible country director and a quote unquote high performing post where there were programs that were doing well in Nicaragua, where that is not the case. If you talk to any Peace Corps volunteer, ask them about their experience, it will be worlds of difference outside of the fact that there's a cultural part, but what you're doing. So the small business development sector, I remember getting the invite and being like, I'm going to teach high school students entrepreneurship. What?
I'm not an entrepreneur.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I got business school, but how am I going to do this? And I'm going to do it in Spanish? What?
Okay, so talk to me about that. Like, how was that 3 month of training? Was that to get you fluent?
So 3 months of pre-service training is called community-based training, where you're in the homestay and you're learning social.
Homestay?
Yeah, they do a homestay where you live with Nicaragua. We're in Nicaragua. Yeah, the pre-service training I call it community-based training because it's in a community, in the culture, in the country, and you're living with a home and you're learning the cultural customs, you're learning the language and the technical skills training, cultural skills training, language skills training in 3 months. Really intensive and crazy. No, you do not learn the language in 3 months. I was actually the slowest language learner, and they had to give me That was literally the slowest. Wasn't sure if I was going to pass, but the turnaround time was when they saw me teach. They gave me a one-on-one teacher because they're like, you're not speaking and you're not the same rate as all the other volunteers. There's 20 of us in the class. So
did you know that?
They told me that.
But you hadn't realized it yourself that you were...
No.
Okay.
I was a perfectionist, so I didn't want to speak unless I knew it was going to be perfect at the time. And type A. And so they gave me a one-on-one, but I remember that the tables turned when they saw me teach. I remember being terrified. It was my first lesson in Spanish with flashcards in Nicaragua. And I remember being so scared. But then once I got in the flow, it was teaching creativity. And so I don't know if you remember the show Pimp My Ride. So
yes. I love Exhibit to this day because of Pimp My Ride.
Because of him? Because he's badass.
He is.
Yeah, he was a good host.
He was. He really was.
Yeah.
So what was it about?
My creativity lesson.
Was on?
Yeah, so I created the lesson was Pimp My Ride, and it was in Spanish, and I was like, I don't know how to translate this, and so it was Enchulame mi moto taxi. And so I taught them how to think about like pimping out their moto taxi, which is a big business there. And I had the time of my life, and I forgot I was teaching, I forgot where I was, and I forgot that I didn't know any Spanish, and the kids had a great time, and it was one of those moments, like, I was so scared of it, and then just all of a sudden, it transformed into this, like, amazing, of a high, being with the students and seeing them learn about creativity in a unique way.
what helped you to flip the switch and stop worrying about like how you were coming across versus just like teaching to them? Like, what do you think helped you in that moment when you were doing your first lesson?
Sure. I remember shaking with my cards, and I didn't speak Spanish, and my, one of the trainers was there, like, she needs to be on, she's slow, and we need to get her up to speed, and we're about to drop her in a site and be by herself. So I remember the moment of seeing the students with the activities and pimping out their moto taxis, and them asking questions, and I was able to understand them, and then me being able to still facilitate this activity with limited language ability. They're learning, and seeing them go from knowing nothing to having an amazing time. Like, it was a fun, interactive experience, and I was lost in how much fun everyone was having and the students were having, and they were in the 11th year, and they were such a good class. They were all so quiet and respectful, and I'm like, where am I? What is going on? So I think that switch happened when you getting lost. And I think it's one of those things where in life, it's like when you forget you're doing something and you're in the flow is where your calling is. Gonzaga taught me that, is like, where can you serve the world? And it makes you reflect and think about your skills and making sure it matches what the world's needs are. That was definitely a value, I think, from Gonzaga. Yeah, I think when you are doing something that you're passionate about, or your like gift, your own superpower, what you're supposed to do, it's natural, and people recognize that and see that, and they're drawn to that because of it. And
okay, so you do the 2 years.
So I was there for 4 years. I was there for 4 years, largely because, badass program director again, but it was a 10-year pilot program. It got adopted into the national curriculum. Nicaragua, as the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, said, I want every high school student their senior year to learn entrepreneurship and write a business plan and do business plan competitions. And so it was then nationalizing the curriculum and training teachers. I mean, the model was train the trainer. So it was always working, not just me teaching, but leaving the legacy of the teacher being excited about it and teaching this entrepreneurship curriculum and running business plan competitions. So I stayed on to train teachers all around Nicaragua, and then stayed on also to train the next group of volunteers who came in during their pre-service training. So still not really getting paid, but being paid like to survive, right? Like $200 a month, which is nothing when your rent is $100 a month, and having $100 to do everything else didn't go a long way. Like, meals were still costly, and I have other people in my life who'd help me stay, who were the reason why I could stay my third and fourth year and still continue to pursue. I worked at 4 different schools when I was there and loved what I was doing. So I stayed on, and then traveled around getting to know this beautiful country and training more teachers and getting them excited.
So at what point did you feel like you were completely comfortable with the language? How long did that take you?
Yeah, people always ask, like, how long were you fluent for? I remember being 7 months in and saying, I could go into an auto mechanic shop. I could go into like a hair salon. And I feel like I could figure my way out, because being fluent is relative in that you go into any situation and you converse. Like, I was conversing, working at 4 different schools, teaching over 200, 300 students at a time, and hopping between 4 different schools. I didn't realize how quickly my Spanish got better.
You were completely immersed.
Completely immersed. At one point, I remember thinking, dreaming, getting mad, getting emotional only in Spanish. Only in Spanish. That's when you really know you've hit.
When you're dreaming
the
in Spanish, you're fluent. Okay, so you leave your 2 years, well, your 4 years are over. Yeah. And you decided to not extend again, or was that not an option, or were you ready to try something else? Why did I leave?
Yeah. I probably would have stayed and still stayed there, but Nicaragua is a very hard country to be in as a female. It is a very machista country. Gender violence is a real thing. Being a Peace Corps volunteer, it's very difficult. There was a lot of violence that happened in Peace Corps. There were 3 rapes in 1 year. Oh. Thankfully, I never was held at gun or knife point, but I was 8 feet away from some Peace Corps friends of mine getting stabbed with screwdrivers. And now they're married because of that weekend. Wow. But, things like that get to you. And also just walking around was stressful. And it was time. It was one of those where I'd been there for 4 years. It's a long time. and I was ready. And I was also in a toxic relationship with a local Nicaraguan. The positive in that is I fell in love with bachata because of it. I fell in love with bachata and salsa while I was there. Yeah, it was time.
And then, so did you go back to
Spokane? Yeah. I wanted to just, safety was a real issue there, obviously. And so I wanted to be my family, and had been actually through a lot of post-traumatic stress, PTSD issues, and the readjustment back to the United States was terrifying and hard. And
how much did your family know about
everything
the
that was
daily?
going on? Oh, I did not.
Okay.
They're probably going to hear this and say, what? Why? She never should have stayed that long. Oh my goodness. My mom came to visit. My sister came to visit twice, and we had an amazing time. You know, when everyone asks you, do you do it again? No, I wouldn't do it again. Do I recommend it for everyone? Absolutely not. But I do think it's an incredible experience. I would never take it back. And found so many tidbits of golden nuggets of life because of it. But coming back into the States, I went back to Spokane and wanted to be safe and feel safe. And hospitality was an easy one. That I was safe in hospitality because I knew it. And so a lot of my friends I worked with previously at the Davenport Hotel had gone on to take over management at other. So I helped out one of my good friends open up a sports bar again and take over management of a sports bar. So I was bartending for 6 months, 7 months at home, and I loved it. I was, helping rebuild something like a startup. I think now I'm like, oh, that was a startup. And same with the hotel. I started at the hotel when they first opened up this boutique hotel in high school. That was a startup. And so did that for 6 months. And it was another moment when I was in Spokane. I said,
did someone tell you again, did you start questioning yourself? Well, why are you still here?
Yeah, I was like, I just did Peace Corps for 4 years. I did entrepreneurship education and training for adults and students. I need to get a job that propels my career. Yeah. Right? One of the amazing things I did when I was back, and Peace Corps gives you a small stipend, like $10,000, which is not a lot, but it's something. It's something. And so with that money, I actually...
Once you were done with the program?
Yeah, once you're done. Yeah. So once you're done, it's like readjustment money. And so I used part of that for South Africa in 2010, but I came back to the United States in 2011 from Peace Corps. So in 2011, I traveled around for 3 months visiting one-way tickets, visiting friends. Took trains, one-way tickets, airplane tickets. I went through Oregon, California, just hopping around, seeing where I wanted to land. Because I knew I wasn't going to stay in Spokane, but I knew Spokane needed to be a bridge and a stepping stone for feeling safe again and being with family and being close to them. And so...
You really made that $10,000 stretch. Goodness.
But I
guess you were used to it 4 years of living off of nothing. Yeah.
And I remember leaving the Peace Corps with 2 suitcases. And it was the hardest thing. I packed 4 years of my life in 2 suitcases. After that, I said, never again do I want to be attached to material things. And so I try to live as minimalist as I can. Yeah. After the three months of traveling around...
What were your top cities?
Yeah, I decided on, I need to move to New York because a lot of Peace Corps friends were in New York.
Okay.
Or Austin, Texas, because I loved Austin, Texas. And then San Francisco. Another Peace Corps volunteer was there.
Okay.
And there was another friend that I had met in Peace Corps that was also there. So just, the thinking of who was there and supporting. And so when I was figuring it out, love came into play. And so I started, there was dating someone that I'd met in Peace Corps who was also in San Francisco. So then when I decided to move, it was where else can I, have the support system and then also learn about entrepreneurship. And I remember when I went to San Francisco, I'm like, what is this definition of entrepreneurship in tech? I don't understand this. I just did entrepreneurship in Nicaragua, which is a whole different type of person, community, issues that you're dealing with. And so the move was like, New York's was on the other side of the world, not on the other side of the States, far away from family. Austin seemed a little bit too slow paced, but probably could see myself settling there eventually, or imagined at the time in 2011. And then San Francisco I could go and learn entrepreneurship and tech in San Francisco. So I moved there.
So you moved there, and then
what happened after?
Yeah, how do you get these opportunities? How do you figure out the next thing to pursue?
You can't go to San Francisco in 2012 and not jump into tech. And so I remember just networking as much as possible, meeting a lot of people in tech. And the first job offer, I just jumped at because I needed to make money. I just spent a certain amount traveling around. And it was an office manager role at a tech company that was a Y Combinator graduated company. And they offered me a pretty decent salary.
How did you get that opportunity? Did you have a connection, or was it
it was a friend. It was an introduction through a friend. And they just wanted to interview me. At the time, thinking about this, it's absolutely ridiculous. It was 3 co-founders and another engineer, and they wanted to hire an office manager.
Why do you need an office manager?
Because they didn't want to do some shit. And so they're like, we're going to hire someone to do some shit.
And a full-time office manager?
And a full-time office manager. AKA they had money to kill.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, because they're Y Combinator, so they'd
raise money.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And it was cool. It was near field communication. It was Arduinos. It was hardware. I was very fascinated. I mean, being the mechanical engineer mind, I was fascinated by all of that. And the technology was amazing, but I am not meant to be an office manager and be in one location or in one room every single day with a routine. Yeah. I have to have a different routine. And, my job today is like living in different worlds and working with advisors and startups and partners and funders. And I never know what the day brings. Yeah. So it was Bad News Bears, and I actually got fired from that role. My first tech company I got fired from, and it was a huge ego shot.
Did you feel it was coming, or was it a shock?
It was a shock for sure. And I remember getting fired, and I didn't have a car at the time, so I rented a zip car, a convertible zip car. I was like, I'm just going to roll around in a convertible in a zip car when I got fired, and just found a random restaurant. I think I found a Latin restaurant and just like sat there and had random conversations with strangers at this Latin restaurant in Alameda, of all places, because I'd never been to Alameda, so I wanted to go there. But it was recovering from that was really, really rough. So shot to the ego. It's like, why did I get fired? But then I was also like, why do co-founders in tech, why do they do what they do? Why do they start companies? And so because of that getting fired, it propelled me to really question other tech companies and what they do and why they do it and how they do it. And so I was lucky enough. I'm like, okay, what can I do to get the most exposure to other tech companies? And this thing called TaskRabbit existed. And it was just a company where you could put a profile up and tech companies could post things that they needed, and you could just take odd jobs and projects. And so I just took anything and everything that came my way. And I, in a very short amount of time, worked with a lot of different companies. I remember feeling really lucky in that I didn't know anything about operations. I worked at Stitch Fix, which recently IPO'd. And I'd never worked in fashion and tech. And I worked in their warehouse operations and learned so much from them. And then Keep, KIIP was like a gaming and rewards company. And I just did a lot of like different odds ends things for them. And then there was a linguistics company that I did like marketing and sales for, another marketing SaaS, Mintigo. I don't know if they still exist. Marketing SaaS platform, which a lot of SaaS did some like sales and convention kind of type business development work for them. So I did a little bit of like marketing, sales, operations, and just learned a lot. But I questioned, and I was with early stage founding teams at the time. And I questioned like, who are they? Why are they doing what they're doing? And how are they doing it? And so I was really on this quest to understand startups and tech because I had such a poor experience in my first role, but learned a lot from it and thankful for now, the struggles. I also found Muay Thai at the time, had leaned in that and as an outlet for just figuring things out and also just learning about other tech companies and trying to regain my confidence again, after getting shot, like your legs chopped off a little bit. Yeah.
What made you make the trek to LA?
Better weather and cheaper living.
Everything is so relevant because I remember before I moved here, I was just like, LA is so expensive. And it is. But when you compare it to like San Francisco or New York, you're like
super affordable. It's still not affordable, but very affordable. I remember San Francisco being the first time I'd ever spent more than $200 on rent. I spent $1,000 on just a bedroom, and we shared one bathroom between 3 girls and didn't even have like a living room shared area. And I left San Francisco. I just remember the weather there. It's cold. June, July, and August is freezing, and I love my lakes. I love the warm. You can't wear shorts in San Francisco. And so, and then how expensive it was. And I left San Francisco at a time when they were throwing eggs at all the Google buses. And I'm like, I think it's time. I had a good sports year in San Francisco. I learned a lot from the tech companies. It's time. And a relationship at the time also too. He moved first and then I moved a little bit later, but LA weather was amazing. You can't beat LA weather. And it was significant. We got so much more bang for our buck rent-wise.
How did you get the opportunity at General Assembly?
Volunteering. I started volunteering at, I think I volunteered to do some jobs.
Did you know about General Assembly from being in San Francisco?
No, I did not.
How did you
found
discover?
out about so whenever I'm unemployed, I volunteer or I look for educational opportunities.
Okay.
So I don't know where that came from, but I like, what classes can I take? And I remember finding General Assembly through some classes. And then I was also like in San Francisco, when I was unemployed in San Francisco, I remember volunteering for the like Filipino community and doing the big Filipino Pistahan parade. And I met a lot of people through that. And so when I moved here, I don't remember what some of the volunteer activities I did. Oh, actually, my first job was I was belaying and doing teams in ropes course, like building, like high ropes course building. That was my first real job in LA. And then found General Assembly, taking classes. And I'm like, the first class I ever took at General Assembly was design thinking for social innovation. And so I
you started volunteering there, and then you learned about an opportunity. And since you had...
Yeah, they were hiring for this audience development producer role. I'm like, I don't even know what that is.
People that are coming to attend courses or events.
It's driving attendance to events. It's organizing events and growing the audience. At the time, they had just started in first ever web development immersive course. And there were, I think, 3 full-time people.
Okay.
Was there in the early stages in 2013 here in LA and organizing 4 or 5 events a week. Actually, completely forgot. I was unemployed for 3 months here in LA, and the best way for me to get to know everyone, I went to every single tech event for 3 months.
And how did you find those?
Eventbrite, Google. Okay. You got to find it. One thing you learn in Peace Corps is like you figure stuff out and you find things. You can find things and make it work. But just meeting a lot of LA tech organizers, partnering with a lot of them through being an audience development producer, and then later on joining the outcomes team, which is more focused on helping General Assembly students get jobs and therefore just expanding that to partnerships in general and doing more business development. But it was a journey working with GA, helping propel and launch the LA campus, and now it's grown. And Miki is a huge part of that growth. Was the reason we went into downtown.
Yeah, one of the things that she said when I interviewed her, when she said you stuck out to her because you had the top knot on her head, and she was like, she wanted to know how to do that. But then one of the things when she first got involved at General Assembly, she said that you were so helpful. Okay, these are the people, these are the organizations that you need to know, and I'm going to make introductions. So my question to you is, where did that mentality or way of working with people, where did that come from in you?
That's another great question, the why of where it came from and how. When I think about my upbringing, my parents were always very helpful. And I think that's a Filipino thing, and I think that's a immigrant thing. And, we were able to move to Spokane because we had the family there who took us in under their wing, Jim and Linda Hall. He let my dad live in their house for 2 weeks, and he didn't even know my dad, but he'd worked with my mom as an engineer. And recognizing that in life, when you go through hardships, there's people who help and that make all the difference. So I think growing up with that and volunteering and just being, my parents still to this day, it's like humility is the most important, gratitude is the most important. And you always have to remind yourself of like the position you're in. I think that's probably where it mostly stems from. And then being fortunate enough to have female role models. Angela Ruff at Gonzaga University was one of my first bosses who I remember, female, single mom, running a nonprofit and just kicking ass. And when I didn't know something, I could ask her and she would just take the time. Having those moments where taking the time, sharing, wanting to see me grow. Like I could tell she was genuinely invested in wanting to see me grow. And
so how did you build your network here?
Yeah, I guess I never really knew I was a natural quote unquote networker until someone told me. It would just be those things where, in Nicaragua, one of my friends in San Francisco went to Nicaragua and met one of my former colleagues that works at the Peace Corps headquarters there. And he's like, oh, I'm not surprised you know Kat because she just knows everyone. And it's like, I didn't know what that meant until I've moved enough to different cities and figured out how to build relationships and just like integrate. I think it's part community integration and part, taking the time to get to know who people are and ask questions. And I genuinely am very curious about people's lives and like to ask a lot of questions. Sometimes I probe too much. My team here is like, Kat, you're asking too many questions. We need you to stop. When I was starting to learn about LA Tech and learn about the community, I think I fell in love with the people that were here. Their backgrounds were so unique. They all came to LA for different reasons, and they were all very creative. And building the network was, I don't know how you... It's a good question. It's like something that came naturally to me. You ask questions and you put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Like I think a lot of people get scared of.
Like what's an example?
Yeah, I hear a lot from other females that are like, I don't want to go to events where I don't know anyone. And there's a lot of, like I was definitely born an introvert. I think I'm an extrovert now, but I was born an introvert and then slowly got into, because of hospitality and because of Peace Corps, it just got me. Yeah. Cuts out all your fear. Like I was terrified of a lot of things in Peace Corps. And once you do things like that in life, you start to just get braver and braver about doing scary things. But I crave being in the uncomfortable zone because that's the point where you grow the most.
Yes.
And Peace Corps was that for me. And so now it's in LA, I was like, I'm just going to go to a ton of events where I don't know people and just talk to them, learn about them and their stories and continue to just grow, and they introduce you to other people or they recommend another thing or another organization, and then we're just volunteering, taking classes. Those are great ways to build your network.
I realized, I think I'm very similar to you. I grew up introverted, and then I was like wearing it as the badge of honor because I started hearing like, Elon Musk, he's an introvert, and Oprah's an introvert, and I'm like, I'm an introvert like them, so that means I'm going to be great. So I really held that as something that was like really important. And I have a friend here that I met, Carla, I interviewed for the podcast. And I remember a couple of times I would say like, yeah, I'm an introvert. And I remember the first time I said it, she like raised her eyebrows like, huh? And then the second time I said it in a different situation, she was like, you're not an introvert. And I was like, what do you mean? And then, because I had never taken like Myers-Briggs, and I took it, and I was an extrovert. And one of the things that I struggled with when I moved here, I was like, I want to do something. I want to get involved in tech. But I was like, but I'm not technical. I'm not like a software engineer. I'm not a product manager. I'm not any of those. So I would feel so nervous about going to tech events because the inevitable question would be like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't belong here. So it was so hard for me to go to events. I remember I was supposed to go to an event. It was actually at General Assembly in Santa Monica, and I didn't go. Because it was going to be like hundreds of people there.
It's scary.
Like, I'm not going to do it. And then I had an event a few days later. One of my friends literally, he asked me, what time do you need to leave to get there? And at the time I was living in Pasadena and it was like rush hour. So it was going to take me like an hour and a half.
Do you remember what tech event too?
It was for Girls in Tech. It was.
I used to organize some Girls in Tech events.
And it was like a happy hour.
Okay.
And I was just like, I don't know. Because when I RSVP'd for it, you could see how many people were coming, and it was like 75. And I was like, I can deal with that number of people.
Yeah.
And then the day of, I checked it again, and it was like maybe
200.
Yeah. And I was like, nope, too many people. And so my friend was like, well, what time do you need to leave? And I was like, well, I need to leave by 5 because I figured that it was going to take me an hour and a half coming from Pasadena to Santa Monica during rush hour. And so he was like, okay, I'm going to text you, check in and make sure that you leave. And then when you get there, you just have to meet 2 people. And then you can leave.
Friend. That's a good friend.
And I was like, it was the only reason why I went. And when I went to that event, I didn't meet Megan, but I met someone who was involved in SparkFest as she did years ago. And if I wouldn't have gone, I would not have known about that event. I wouldn't have met Megan. And that Megan hosted, I learned about Esprit and
Esprit Devora.
Yeah. I learned about
amazing
her.
women in tech stuff and her podcast and everything else.
And I just think about like me being afraid to show up. But that was just, the thing that I learned about myself was if I hosted an event, I was like the life of the party. So then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start volunteering at events because then I feel like that I should be here because, hey, I'm volunteering here. So I deserve to be here. And then after a while, I was like, maybe you don't want that to be your crutch. Like, do you always have to volunteer at something to feel like that you belong?
Sure.
And I was at an event, I think it was a We Are LA Tech event, and I was talking to someone and I made the like self-deprecating thing, like, well, I'm not technical.
It's crazy the stories we tell in our head.
You're like, I do HR. And then the guy that I was talking to was like, well,
you're still a woman in tech.
Most companies need HR, whether they're tech or not. And I was like, you know what?
You're right.
But it was like so weird. And I finally got over it. And now I love going to events by myself because I'm like, you have to talk to people.
Because you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were forced to talk to people. It's a great way to build community, build people. And you just never know what's going to lead you or who it's going to connect you to when you go by yourself. And it really forces you, because if you go with a friend, you're easily
that
just
crutch. Yeah, like, oh, we're going to talk to each other versus me. Like, you could either stand here by yourself or you can talk to some people. And they're thinking the same thing as you are. Like, we all are nervous. You think you're going to be like, I always have the fear of like showing up and like everyone knows you and they're happy to see each other. And I'm just like, hi guys. I don't know any of you, like feeling like you're going to be that.
Sure. Half the time it's 60% of the room that's terrified to be there, didn't want to come.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you go from General Assembly to Bixel?
I probably visited and toured over 150 tech companies in LA through General Assembly because I was building relationships for outcomes and partnerships, for education, for marketing, but mainly for outcomes and hiring. And so I was building relationships with hiring managers with product design and web development. And partnership with Bixel actually came about, and they had worked with startups and they had also done some work with students. And I had hosted a couple events at General Assembly, hosting underserved high school students and introducing them to what it's like to be in tech. So it was a Determined to Succeed week, which is another nonprofit. And I had fully like organized and planned out a full week of exposing them to entrepreneurship and exposing them to tech. And I loved it. And I invited, I think, Sergio Rosas, who was the previous director of the Tech Talent Pipeline. We had done a project together through his former role where we took a truck full of computers to like South LA for 3 weekends in a row and just taught people how to code. So General Assembly brought those teachers, they did the operations, and I fell in love with what they were doing and the impact that they were making. And it was clear they were executing on it. And Sergio having a first conversation with me when I was at downtown at GA and talking about what he was doing, I'm like, I am still trying to grasp what you're doing. It sounds really intense and amazing, but I need to understand it. So I had a lot of questions for him. And then he's like, oh yeah, we have another director that does a startup launch thing. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, tell me more, entrepreneurs. And so I met Kevin Liu, fell in love with the team, and was partner of theirs for 2 years before I even thought about coming on board. And it was just happened to be, I was kind of transitioning out and looking for opportunities when I was at GA, and Kevin Liu at the time was also transitioning out and got an opportunity working with a startup. It came about at a time when I was also looking at other roles, and I had a few job offers. I feel fortunate enough to have had a few job offers. I didn't even think I was getting one or two, let alone like a few. There were 5 specifically.
Wow.
And I'm like, how do I decide? And Bixel Exchange it fit a lot of what I wanted, the skills I wanted to learn, the community I wanted to serve, thinking about my experience, really varied and being different every day. And I was still really hesitant because I was like, there's a government piece to it, and then like compliance and data and like fundraising and budgeting, but I know I can do it. And, I was thinking about the stat of men apply for jobs where they're 60% qualified and women like won't even think about it.
Yeah. Like, oh, it's asking
we tell
for
ourselves
10
these things
and only have 8 of them, so I'm not going to
apply. I don't even think like that.
I'm like, what? I got 2? Oh, they'll be lucky to have me.
It's like the founders of Girls Who Code who talks about like raising our women to be brave, not perfectionists, which I love. Bravery and risks and just doing it, like the fear. Actually, I was telling you, I was just doing meditation right before this, and the meditation I was from fear to fun. Recognizing that feeling of when you overcame something that was so scary, and then keeping that and holding that and thinking of it as a fairy dust of fun rather than fear, and letting fear like trap you, or like whatever story that we tell ourselves in our head of like, we don't deserve here, we deserve to be here, or we don't, or this is too scary, I can't do it.
So when did you recognize that your talents and skills were enough?
Were enough? I think I fight every single day with that question. I think the imposter syndrome is a real thing that a lot of us suffer from. And I see it in my friends too, my close badass girlfriends who are like directors and founders and CEOs. And they're like, we question, I think collectively, and I don't know if this is a female thing or just a human thing, but when you have a supportive group of community like Miki Reynolds, Megan Setti, other aspiring women, you who are doing amazing things, and they say, wow, that's like, you inspire me, or like, you have to recognize that even though you feel like you're not doing something, like you did this, this, and this. It's like when you have friends of yours who are close to you, who know you, say like, okay, take a step back and like, let's really look at like what you've been able to do. I think it's those moments where validation of like, okay, I think my experience up until today has really, really paid off, even though it's been this like crazy windy road, and like And then, getting nominated, I told you the LA Business Journal in 2018, Women of Influence. And Miki was one last year. Yay. And, I recently saw Ariana Huffington speak too, and she talked a lot about this negative talk. It's like your annoying roommate or something who's telling you have to like nip that in the butt and say like, I'm here because I'm supposed to be here.
What are 5 apps or services you can't live without?
Well, my calendar. Absolutely can't live without my calendar. I live and breathe by my calendar. Oh my God, you're really making me think about this because it's like so second nature. I love ClassPass. I love variety and working out. Like I do meditation stuff on there. I did a parkour class on there.
Oh, that is so scary.
Parkour is cool. It was crazy. I think Eventbrite and like meetup.com are cool because it's just an easy way to use Google and just like I want to do more outdoors things. So I'm like going to outdoor meetups or Eventbrite was the reason why I was able to find a lot of these tech events and just go to them.
Eventbrite and Meetup are, if you believe that you are so unique or weird that you're the only person that's into something, go to those and you will find thousands of people who are in the same thing too.
You'll find your tribe.
Yes. The podcast that you listen to for meditations, what is it called?
Yeah. Shell Hamilton's Meditation Minis.
What is something you geek out about that you think more people should get into?
I geek out on a lot of things. I'm a gamer. I love Diablo. I played Diablo as a, 7th and 8th grader and then recently discovered it again. But every time I play, like go into an 8-hour hole, which I can't do. That's another thing. I don't know if more people should do that, but Hyperloop, the future of transportation and technology. Technology like that doesn't exist is really amazing. I also really like superheroes. Superheroes weren't so cool before. Now they're really cool due to Marvel and Disney. I think the whole Wonder Woman and Black Panther effect is going to be incredible, but I've always been in love with superheroes and I'm obsessed. People who know me, I'm obsessed with Transformers. I think I have every single type of Transformers paraphernalia you could possibly think of, specifically Autobots, because I don't know, they're robots and they're cool and they save the world and they transform into cars, which are also cool.
Who are your possibility models? So these are women of color who show you it's possible to live your dreams, or it's someone you think more people should know about.
Founder of Tala, Shivani Soraya. I remember meeting her and already knowing about her company. It's like fintech and being like, oh my God, I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity. She is building like a credit score system and capturing data points on people who using the phone and using an app, credit scores for people all around the world in developing countries. There's no data around people in developing countries, no entrepreneurs. And it's amazing what she's doing. One of my girlfriends, Jacqueline, she's one of the youngest COOs and chief operating officers at a big healthcare company in Massachusetts, African-American, Black, and just a badass and just coming from Jacqueline Johnson.
Okay.
Miki Reynolds, because she's, just her trajectory and co-founding Grid 110. And she's one of the most generous and giving people I know. And, speaking of helpful, anyone she meets she's always able to like also connect the dots / give you resources and point you in the right direction in such a like real and honest way.
Okay. So if people wanted to find you online, where should they go?
Twitter. I'm not like the most active on Twitter, but I try to capture a lot of cool, activities that I go to and just being exposed to the world that I live in and a lot of different people and amazing events and people and organizations. And I try to capture a lot of that and share resources on Twitter. Bixelexchange.com.
Okay.
Check us out. Anyone out there who is looking for no-cost, non-equity advising as a startup tech entrepreneur, but also on tech pathways, if you're a tech company and want badass interns from community colleges.
Okay. So final question. The name of this podcast is How She Did It. If you could go back in time and give your younger self some career advice, what would you say?
Jump in places that you would least expect. Because we make plans when we're young and we think, I remember saying, when I'm 24, I'm going to be married. I'm going to have a career.
I was 26 when I was getting married.
I'm going to be doing all this. And I'm 33 this year and not in any way wanting a family or marriage anytime soon. And just jump. I was fortunate to have a lot of awesome models, but I was such a type A and so perfectionist. It's okay when things don't go your way. And I know this now, but didn't know it then, but things always work out in the end. It's comforting.
And that's the show. All things discussed in this episode can be found on the show notes page at howshedidit.club/14. If you like this episode, I would really appreciate it if you shared it with your friends and also rated the podcast on iTunes. This helps other people find the show. Go to howshedidit.club/rate for instructions.